Hello everybody, John Fenn here once again, supernaturalhousechurch.org, and talking about the process of discipleship. Today talking about family in heaven. And today I'm going to be sharing with you from some experiences I had when I was given a tour of heaven some years ago. And I thought about this long and hard about putting this on Facebook Live and what people may think or something like that. But you know what the truth is? This is the truth, and when we get to heaven, the Lord will be there to say, yes, that's right. You didn't embellish anything. You told it exactly as you saw it and experienced it. So I'm going to go ahead with this. Over the winter, there have been a lot of friends who've had family who's passed on, and we've had our own bouts with our handicapped son that, while not rising to the occasion of a crisis like that, it's an ongoing burden in our lives, an ongoing thing that we have to deal with in our lives. And so I was remembering back to when I was given a tour of heaven and some of the things that I saw. So I'll share that here this morning a little bit. The first thing I saw, one of the most remarkable things I saw, was when we were walking by, and I say we, there was an angel that was showing me around heaven. And there were a group of people and a little girl and a little boy sitting under a tree with about 12 or 14 adult relatives around them. And I knew somehow as we passed them, I knew this little girl and boy, were sister and brother. The girl maybe 6 years old or thereabouts, and the little boy, maybe the girl was 4 or 5. I'm not that good at guessing. And the little boy was definitely a toddler crawling all around her. And she was sitting with her back against a tree and legs crossed, and there were people around. It was like a little family reunion thing. But I saw that there was missing generations. I mean, I saw grandmas, grandpas, aunts and uncles and everything. And everybody looked like they were, in their mid-30s, but you could see the age in them. That's one of the things I have a difficult time communicating when I talk about old people in heaven. And I can tell you that the things of earth drop away, the things that gravity cause, the things that age cause, disease, et cetera, drop away. But what remains is the youthfulness and the joy on their face, and so that's in the Lord. And so it's like you can see the wisdom that they had in their ages, and you can tell that they're older, and yet at the same time in their face they look like they're in their mid-30s. But anyway, there was clearly a generation missing. So as we walked by, I said, "Where's mom and dad?" I said, "They're missing." And the angel said, he said, "These two children died in a car wreck in Texas." And he said, "But their parents survived. They're on the earth." And I stopped for a second. He said, "When possible, children are raised by relatives in heaven." And I said, "I need chapter and verse on that." And he said, "Have you not read Ephesians 3:14 and 15, where Paul said, 'I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named'?" And he said, and he stopped and let that sink in, of who the whole family in heaven and earth is named. And he let that sink in a little bit, and he looked at me and he said, "There is but one family in heaven and earth." And that blessed me so much, and it was amazing to me to think about that, and how good and how gracious the Lord is in that, and that there is family. There is family, one family in heaven and earth, and that's from His perspective. That's the way it is. See, death and illness and things that we have to deal with, and the burdens that we have as bodies deteriorate and go the ways of the earth, and disease happens and all that. And it's such a burdensome, such a sorrowful thing, and yet at the same time, from heaven's perspective, there's just one family in heaven and earth. That's it. An interesting thing too, another thing that I saw was a couple little girls who had died of cancer, and they were actually playing with some other boys and girls that were part of a large open area. And the one girl had particularly beautiful hair. And it was long down to the middle of her back. She was probably 8 or 10 years old, and there was a little girl about 6 or 7 as well. And they were also playing with a boy who was at that time probably 10 or 12, and he was definitely from India. And they came over and talked to me, and because I asked questions, I said, "What about this girl? Her hair is just beautiful, just honey-colored, glowing, just bright, beautiful, thick hair." And he said, and the angel was talking, he said, "This is the goodness of your Father." He said when she was going through her cancer treatment, she lost all of her hair. And her hair meant so much to her because it was so beautiful and thick on the earth. And she lost all her hair in the treatment. And he said, but she told everybody it didn't matter, that it was okay. But he said, your father knew that she was just being brave and telling people that because in her heart she really mourned the loss of her hair. And he said this, he said, so when she got here, your father made sure that she had that thick, beautiful hair once again. And I think the goodness of it and the thing to take away and the thing to share this morning is just the reality that we are eternal beings, that we don't need these physical bodies to live forever. You know, I go back to something that I share several times and many times and quite often, and it goes back to a conversation Barb and I had back when we were first married with her grandmother, who was about 90 years old at the time. She lived to age 92. And her grandma was there in the nursing home, confined to a wheelchair. You know, she'd been a farm wife all her life and everything. And she said this to us. She chuckled, and she said, you know, inside I still feel like that 17-year-old girl who could run through the orchard, you know, out at the farm. But there she is, you know, 92-year-old woman sitting in a wheelchair. And that point, inside I feel like that 17-year-old running through the orchard. That's proof that we don't need these physical bodies to live, because the bodies change around us, but we ourselves are the same person. And there will come a time when these bodies will lay down before we receive a glorified body, but there will come a time when these bodies of the earth will lay down and our spirit and soul go on unchanged. But I wanted to just share that this morning as I'm thinking about one family in heaven and earth. One family in heaven and earth. And one other thing I'll share, and I'll throw this out there, and it's you know, I write about it in my book, Pursuing the Seasons of God, some of the experiences that I've had. But I was taken to an area where I saw a bunch of angels standing, and they were all standing like this with their hands just like this in front of them, and they were very solemn. When I say angels, they looked just like men. These guys were big, at least my size. I'm 6'6", almost 2 meters tall, and you know, and they were all standing like this, very solemn, shoulder to shoulder, rank and file. And I noticed that each of them had this white spherical ball in their hands, like hovering in between their hands. And you know, on earth that looks like a running back for American football about to receive the ball, and he goes like this so the quarterback can put the ball there and he can clamp down on it and go. But these angels were just standing there like this with this white kind of spherical ball, kind of foggy looking on the outside. It was fuzzy and foggy looking on the outside, and it was just hovering there between their hands. And I stopped and I looked at the angel. I said, "What am I seeing? Just rank and file, just thousands upon millions, actually, probably." And he said, "This is where all the miscarried and aborted babies go, and in the ages to come, they will fulfill their destinies." And I wanted to what I was looking at, what actually happened is I about the same time he said that, I had just desired to see what is in that fuzzy ball that these angels were there between their hands. And when I looked, you know, just had that thought, Father, I'd sure like to see that. I was able, suddenly my eyes were open to be able to see into that. And I saw babies like growing in wombs. And they were at all different stages, and all these angels were just standing there. And I didn't see the transition. I don't know how that happens. But when the angel said, this is where all the miscarried and aborted babies go, and in the ages to come they will fulfill their destinies, I realized it just brought all of this home, that there is one family in heaven and earth. Every single person is important, is eternal. And I go back to and finish thoughts about how the relationships are all that matter. The relationships are really all that matter. The earth will be turned inside out and reserved for fire, Peter said. You know, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. But people are forever. Barb was reading to me a testimony of a woman who found herself in a bunch of rubble in a collapsed building, a building that had been blown up actually, and she was in the rubble of it. And as she lay there unsure whether she was going to live or die, she reviewed her life. She'd been a career woman. She was single, just concerned about career and money and status and social climbing and all the different things. And she lay there with rubble all over, and she realized, she said, that she'd lived just such a selfish life, that the only thing that really mattered to her was not her bank account or her status or her positions on all the boards of directors and all that stuff. The only thing that mattered to her were the people in her life. And she determined, she said, God, you know, if I get out of here, then I'm going to change my life. And she did that. She now is had lost a bunch of weight. She'd gone from morbidly obese to losing a bunch of weight, runs marathons, married, you know, all the things where she reordered her life. And so, you know, a mix of thoughts here this morning as I'm dealing with things. I'm about to leave for a doctor's appointment for our son because of some of his behavior and some of the things going on, and thinking on eternal things, thinking about the burden of bodies that fail and are flawed and diseased and everything, and thinking back to what I saw in heaven, how there's one family in heaven and earth, and that children do grow up. Everyone appears to grow up to about age 30, 35, something like that, and how that is real. that inside, even though I'm going to be 59 years old this year, 2017, inside I still feel like I could dunk a basketball. You know what? I can't dunk a basketball anymore. I feel like I could on the inside, but I'm not going to try that with my body. So I just want to leave you with that. There's one family in heaven and earth. People are what matters. Relationships are what matters. And when the Lord comes back and he says, I was hungry, thirsty, naked, sick, in prison, you fed me, clothed me, watered me, gave me food, visited me, whatever the case is, it demonstrates that our priorities should be each other. They're each other. So make the priorities in your life the people who matter the most. All right, God bless. Next week.